Chris, I don't know whose side I'm on or whose side I'm supposed to be on. I don't know who's being loyal and disloyal. I'm nodding along to Seth in some of the things he says. I'm nodding along to Roman. I'm nodding along to Punk. I feel sort of bad for Heyman, but I'm also thinking, well, you know what Seth's saying about him is true. I'm all over the place. I am intrigued with this story, and I want to see how it plays out at WrestleMania. In what direction it's going. I don't have a clear idea of what's going to happen. Certainly not even more so how it's going to happen. But I also don't know what I'm rooting for, and I don't know if the WWE fans are either. I mean, Seth's out there giving a speech, and then the fans are chanting CM Punk and kind of perturb Seth a little bit as he's giving a speech about favors and speaking, I think, some truth. And then later, Seth fights back, and the crowd cheers and sings a song as he's standing over Heyman. So compelling. I think people are going to tune in to see what happens. But do you agree with me that it's kind of like, I think there's no clear direction that I feel I'm being given on who to be siding with here, and it's kind of up to everybody.
Yeah, I think the storyline is all over the place. I think it's very difficult to focus on who you should be rooting for, who you should be rooting against. And basic pro wrestling is based on that. I know a lot of people try to stay away from that, but really it's, good versus evil. I think the promos were good. I mean, I didn't like Seth Rollins's, or it turned me off. We need more people in the industry like me who will sacrifice their physical and mental health. And I thought to myself, I mean, I was wrestling in the 80s and 90s when I would watch a show and they'd begin the show the next week talking about someone who'd passed away. This is not a issue in wrestling as much anymore of watching, people younger than me now dropping dead, but I wouldn't really talk about that in a lot of ways. Though he did make some good points, but I think to me, CM Punk is popular because he's kind of new. Roman is still cool, and Seth makes good points, but also to me, I'm sort of like, is Paul Heyman that important? I mean, we've spent a lot of the bloodline time with Roman Reigns and having people run in left and right. Paul Heyman's not one of these managers that will hit someone with a chair or he has a stable of people that'll run in. It just doesn't make sense to me that everyone seems to be so concerned that, well, Paul Heyman's in my corner. It's like, I've lamented in wrestling that we've gone to too many tournaments as ways to make number one contenders, but I wish that this match had the winner of this match gets the winner of, John Cena versus Cody Rhodes at the next pay-per-view or something like that. Would at least have them a reason to win, as opposed to this, we want Paul Heyman to like us more storyline, which to me just isn't as interesting.
Yeah, and it's a great point. We're kind of wrapped up in who he's supposed to root for, but there is another question here, which is, why does it matter whose side Heyman is on? And in addition to that, Seth is saying, we're fighting to steer the direction of this industry going forward. And it's sort of like, okay, it sounds kind of good, but is there some, entity that's going to give extra power to the wrestler who wins? Or is it going to make a statement? Well, you were able to beat these other two, so therefore you get to decide, or you have shown the world something that will last beyond that match. It's a bit of a vague notion. And I guess we're just supposed to buy into it. Really, really, really matters whose corner Paul Heyman is in, even though it's not like UFC, where he's providing just help on one corner of the ring. I mean, so yeah, the whole, if you think about it that hard, there's sort of a leap of faith here that you have to believe that there's something about Heyman's intellect and coaching or prep work, scouting, he radiates some sort of aura that gives you an advantage in a match with an outcome that they're fighting for pride, but now Seth says they're fighting for more. That's a big ask for fans, and I think even if they're not overtly thinking about it, that is sort of hanging out there. Like, if they made this just more about, the pride of winning and didn't make it bigger, that would eliminate kind of what Seth is building up. But then you would say, well, is that enough to be the biggest WrestleMania triple threat ever. So I don't know. I mean, kind of like a lot of what's going on this WrestleMania season, it's sort of a ambiguous pick'em, but it's not leading to ambivalence, which is, I think, one of the side effects of not doing more straight babyface heel matchups like Gunther Jay, where it's clear the crowd just is unified for one and against the other. It's not ambivalence, but it is, I think, confusion, and a lot of fans like just kind of. I think a lot of people watching that change their sort of allegiance or their sympathy multiple times watching the one segment, and I don't know. I just don't. I don't know if these three in this moment isn't enough to justify that. I just wish it wasn't happening elsewhere at the same time.
Yeah, this is definitely, and they made a joke about it, but this is definitely a cult of personality match, in where the hope is that the personality of the three wrestlers, being three of the most over popular, interesting, however you want to call them, wrestlers of WWE, and not knowing sure who's going to win, is going to carry the day for probably a week storyline. Most of Paul Heyman, and as someone, you know Paul Heyman better than me, but someone who's watched him for a long time, he is less active as a manager than he was. He is not the manager of the Samoan SWAT team or original Midnight Express. Yeah. Paul Heyman, most matches that he has managed Roman Reigns during the Bloodline, he pretty much stood in the corner nervous that Roman might lose.
Yep.
He's not like even Arn Anderson when he managed Cody, who at least looked like he had like a play sheet, I would call a play or something. So it just doesn't. I know he's the wise man and he has this history, but it doesn't seem, CM Punk beat Drew McIntyre without him. This crazy blood feud. So why would it just doesn't resonate with me, I guess, long story short.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, different managers over time have played roles where you would think it's important to have them there, especially if the vibe is these wrestlers aren't successful or wouldn't be nearly as successful or wouldn't even be complete without the manager. And I think like Bobby Heenan and Nick Bockwinkel, there was a sense of, and the greatest manager-wrestler pairing ever, I would argue, Heenan was Bobby the Brain Heenan. And the idea was he was manipulative and a shrewd negotiator, also interfered in matches, created distractions, and allowed Nick Bockwinkel, just a great, great wrestler in the 70s into the 80s, AWA world champion when the AWA was a big three territory along with the NWA and WWF. And Nick was more Gunther-like, very, very a scientific wrestler, as they said back in the day. Very, very prim and proper. Didn't want to bother with a lot of things that Heenan did. And so, Jim Cornette, Midnight Express, the idea was he was the shrewd negotiator. He took care of the business side. Same thing with J.J. Dillon. He took care of the business side. So Tully and Flair and Arn could go party and live out there, make the success in wrestling worth it to them so they could go, a party and drink and cavort. With Heyman, it's not as clear, but I think you laid it out like he's the wise man and there's something about it. I think we can talk this through, but I mean, what it comes down to is more a loyalty test. Whatever Heyman's value is, and it's baked in and consistently presented as there's intrinsic inherent value in having him by your side, even if they don't specify it a lot. But what it comes down to is a sense of loyalty and betrayal. In tonight's episode, Punk and Seth and Roman, they all made their arguments about what's going on here and how to frame the favor. If you had to, Chris, do you think somebody made a better point to say a dispassionate audience who wasn't invested in these characters ahead of time? Did Heyman just pay someone back? Is Roman saying, why am I getting screwed? Is Seth saying this was a choice? This favor wasn't an obligation.
Yeah, Seth is right. It was a choice from Heyman to give this favor to CM Punk. But the thing that they miss in all this is that Paul Heyman or CM Punk said this before, but need to reiterate this, is the reason why he went and gave him this favor is because they had no one else wanted to team with them. Seth Rollins didn't want to team with them. They couldn't get anyone else. So that's the reason why the favor came in. It wasn't just because Paul Heyman was just being, he was just like, oh, I'm just going to offer CM Punk this thing to get him on my side. It was like he actually had a reason for that because they were going to go in the War Games match one person short. I think that needs to be reiterated again, or should have been reiterated again today.
All right, let's pause and introduce ourselves in the show quickly, and then we'll read some comments in the chat that are in response to what we're saying here and in the show closing angle tonight. A lot more to get into, too, including soundbite vignettes with each of the three women in the triple threat match. More hype for WrestleMania, an in-ring angle promoting AJ Styles and Logan Paul. Another kind of backstage fight and brawl regarding the Intercontinental title four-way, which is another match where it's sort of a pick-em in terms of who you're rooting for and rooting against. Not across the board, but there's some ambiguity there with Braun Breaker especially, and more. So yeah, we have a lot more to talk about. But first things first, introducing ourselves. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, April 14th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, a longtime reporter on professional wrestling dating back to the late 1980s when in high school I launched the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter. It's appeared on the Netflix documentary on Vince McMahon, and I've been a source for many wrestling books and many wrestling documentaries over the decades. I've been on a good handful of wrestling documentaries over the years talking about big topics in professional wrestling, and the newsletter has covered those with a journalistic approach. We're not just, and there's no shame in it, but not just showing up to comment on pro wrestling here. The Torch is a bit of a legacy brand covering pro wrestling, and we're bringing that approach to our analysis of wrestling, not just saying what we like and don't like and reacting to what's happening, but also trying to understand why they do what they do, why sometimes what they do feels counterproductive or ill-advised, but other times praising what works and trying to amplify the aspects of it that do work. And WrestleMania season is peak season for our approach to that. So if you are interested in knowing more about what we do, pwtorch.com/govip is the page where you can get information on signing up. You can unlock 35 plus years of archives of back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, my long form interviews with some of pro wrestling's biggest names over the decades. The Rock, Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, Vern Gagne, Lou Thez, Bill Watts, Eric Bischoff, on and on. So many big name interviews over the decades, and you can unlock and read those transcripts and listen to many of them in our archives. pwtorch.com/govip. It is WrestleMania season, which means this coming weekend we'll have a lot of WrestleMania coverage, live coverage on the site, my report on the website, written report with match analysis, along with Brandon LeClaire with his report and his analysis. So two perspectives on the site. So peel yourself away from refreshing social media and check out our website or create a separate tab and see what Brandon and I are saying about the show. And if you can't see it live or are kind of going to pick your spots on what to watch, we'll help guide you on what seems can't miss and what seems skippable. We also will be doing a podcast Saturday night and Sunday night. There'll be two free ones right here on the PW Torch YouTube channel and on the PW Torch Daily Cast free podcast feed. Brandon LeClaire will be hosting that. Greg Parks will be with them one of the nights and probably a different co-host the other night. All you have to do is search PW Torch in your podcast app or just check out our reports on pwtorch.com, and we'll have a link to the live show if you want to watch it live on YouTube. You can participate as a caller too. Or you can listen to it later on demand on YouTube or on our podcast app. Also, I will be hosting after night 1 and night 2 of WrestleMania our VIP exclusive roundtables. We've been doing this since 2003. If you go VIP, you can unlock not only 2 decades plus of post pay-per-view roundtables, but also when you do that, there's a podcast feed specific to our WrestleMania roundtables, a special section on the website that also gives you links to our WrestleMania coverage over the decades. So we've organized that and curated and combined it so that it's easy to digest if you want to really take a deep dive into our coverage, either in the lead up to or coming out of WrestleMania. Again, pwtorch.com/govip for full information on all the benefits of VIP membership. We are here, though, to talk Raw. We still got a SmackDown to go, and we got a Dynamite in between, NXT tomorrow night, live here on YouTube on our NXT post show. A lot still to come between now and WrestleMania. And I hope that you'll be part of all of that. Tonight, we're here to talk about the final Raw before WrestleMania. And the voice you hear and the voice you see, if you're watching us on YouTube, is Chris Maitland. He is a PW Torch contributor. He is the host of Wrestling Coast to Coast, part of the aforementioned PW Torch Daily Cast lineup. And every day, there's a different show with a different theme and different hosts on the PW Torch Daily Cast lineup. It is free with ads. You can just search PW Torch on your podcast app to subscribe, or go to pwtorchdailycast.com to see the lineup and links to the latest shows. You can also go VIP and create curated, customized feeds for each of the shows, and also experience those shows with the ads and plugs removed. And Chris, it's great to have you back with me. Tell people about Wrestling Coast to Coast and what you're doing in the lead up to WrestleMania, just kind of the theme of that podcast overall.
Sure. I'm one half of Wrestling Coast to Coast with my good friend of over 25 years, Justin McClelland. Our show comes out on Wednesdays, and we cover usually a different independent wrestling show every week, analyze like you would any of the show, pluses, minuses, things we like, things we don't like, wrestlers we look forward to see more of the future. Last week we did a interesting promotion called Memphis Wrestling, which is actually on YouTube and Triller TV. It's kind of a TV studio wrestling, harks back to the Memphis days, but with a modern flair. Also has some WWE ID presence, as well as some other name wrestlers coming and going in there. So it was interesting. Our show this week come out on Wednesday. Also on last week's show, I should mention that we also talked about WWE Evolve has had a lot of independent wrestlers, and there was a tag team called Swipe Right that appeared on NXT. We've been following them for a while, and we talked about them on their debut on NXT. We enjoyed that. This week we're doing a promotion called Dreamwave, their 10th anniversary show. They're a promotion out of Chicago. We're discussing them this week, as well as Justin and I discussing we attended the New Japan Pro Wrestling Windy City Riot show, which is the first New Japan show I've attended in 6 years. But when your favorite wrestler, Hiroki Goto, wins the IWGP title, you have to drive 5.5 hours to Chicago, which I did on Friday. So we talk about we do a different show every week for WrestleMania weekend. Last year I actually went to a show in Philadelphia. This year we're not going to Las Vegas. It is Easter weekend, so that is a tough weekend for us to travel, a little bit far for us living in Ohio. But we will cover at least one or two shows that take place on WrestleMania weekend. There are so many, if I started mentioning them now, we'd be here through WrestleMania, starting on Tuesday, really. A lot of them available on some of the streaming services as well as YouTube. We will cover a couple of those starting next week. And again, as I said before, our show comes out usually Wednesdays, depending on when we start after I put the kids to sleep.
Chris, what you just said there is interesting. How has WrestleMania becoming such a full weekend event with SmackDown, Hall of Fame, the NXT mega show in the Saturday afternoon, and then WrestleMania night 1, and then WrestleMania night 2. Oh, and then there's a Pat McAfee thing and an Undertaker thing and after parties. What has it done to WrestleMania weekend being a celebration of independent wrestling and a chance for wrestling fans to travel and experience more than just a WWE brand of this genre? Are you noticing a substantial change in that? And if so, in what way in the last few years?
I think that it's great for wrestling fans to be able to see all different types of wrestlers in this arena. Ring of Honor used to use their biggest show usually of the year was WrestleMania Weekend Supercard of Honor. I think if you're a wrestling fan, you get to learn about a lot of different things and see different people. I think one of the mistakes we made, we went to WrestleMania, I guess 2016 in Dallas, is we burned ourselves out by going to far too many wrestling shows. It seemed on paper great to go to 3 wrestling shows in a day. In reality, it was not. I think it's helpful to give a lot of prominence to promotions that people would not know otherwise, but you can see different wrestlers pop up. And I think this year is going to be very interesting because you have 2 WWE ID shows that are going to be tournament matches for their men's and women's titles. So you're going to see WWE really for the first time. I mean, they had relationships with Evolve where you'd see people show up, but between many wrestlers being on Bloodsport, as well as WWE really working with Future Stars of Wrestling in Las Vegas and GCW, which is pretty much nationwide, having a WWE presence on an independent show, I think, will be very interesting, not just for this year, but for future WrestleManias.
All right, very good. Let's pivot back to talking about Raw tonight. Again, if you want to be part of the conversation, you can jump in the chat if you're watching us live on YouTube. And I'll be reading some of those chats right now and putting them on the screen for those who are viewing us on YouTube. And I will also be looking at our inbox, wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you are interested in emailing us as opposed to being in the chat, you can do that ahead of time if you don't watch us live, so you can be part of the show, even if you're not watching on YouTube right afterwards. And then you could also be a video caller. That is VIP and Patreon supporter exclusive. You can find the link to be a video caller in my TV reports at pwtorch.com. pwtorchvip.com, the ad-free VIP exclusive version of our website with bonus content, and also on our Patreon page for our Patreon supporters. If you are interested in a 7-day free trial of unlocking our current podcasts, and that's your main interest, you might want to check out a 7-day free trial this week. That'll get you through Wrestlemania. Just search PWTorch VIP in Patreon or Spotify to get a 7-day free trial to unlock all the VIP shows and get the ad-free versions of the free shows. All right, so I mentioned the chat, and there's been a lot of conversation on our A block talking about Seth, Roman, Punk, and Heyman. Let's throw a few comments up there, and we'll respond to a few of them. First up, Sadler version 3. We're talking about what Heyman's value is. I think in kayfabe, you could argue that Paul Heyman managed the two most dominant champions of the last decade, Roman and Brock. So it shows he's a valuable mentor to have around. It's absolutely baked in to Heyman's reputation that he is a manager of champions. He is a facilitator of potential. But it would be good to know, but maybe you don't want to draw attention to it because there's no good answer. That's the caveat to this. What value Punk gets from Heyman choosing to be in his corner. If you're going to cash in a favor, what value is there? And if Heyman is not being disloyal to Roman, does being in Punk's corner mean actually helping him beat Reigns through scouting, through in-match coaching, and through perhaps distractions? And I, obviously that's a question on people's minds, is what exactly does this favor entail? But that's, Chris, not a pushback, but just sort of a way to look at Heyman. It's inherent. Look at who he's associated with and the success that they've had. But you can follow that up and going, how does that translate just a couple of weeks before Mania into something that would give an advantage to Punk?
Yeah. Also, in addition to that, what disadvantage does Roman have by him not being in his corner? Yep. Because
other than feeling abandoned or disloyal, or like that Heyman's disloyal, and his feelings are hurt. You know what I mean? He feels betrayed. But strategy-wise is your point, right?
Yeah. So what does Paul Heyman do that Roman is losing and Punk is gaining, or even the Seth Rollins last week about maybe you owe me a favor? Like what? It's almost like I feel like in sports, it's a lot of people are wondering, or I'll give you an example actually. When Andy Reid left the Eagles, he was out of a job for like a day, went right to the Chiefs. It's like, okay, people see him as a great coach. What does Paul Heyman offer that everyone is jumping over themselves to have him in their corner? Just they haven't made that clear.
Yeah. Derek Mitchell says Heyman is more like Gary Hart now. Four Eyes Malone says, I can't picture Heyman and Seth making sense. Chris Johnson quips, Heyman is the new friendship bracelet. Sadler version 3 says, I think Heyman goes with Seth. It'd be the most interesting story. Then maybe Seth could finally be a new character and shed the criticism of him only being over because of his.
Oh, we lost Wade here, so I'll keep reading. Basically says that shed the criticism of Seth that being over only because of his catchy music. I think he's probably more over than just the music, but maybe if he's with Paul Heyman, he would have. If Seth being with Paul Heyman means that Seth will change his outfits, then yeah, I'm all for Paul Heyman. That's Rollins. If that's what the end result of it, then let's do that.
When Seth comes out to his music and the crowd goes nuts, Seth has to feel like, wow, I'm popular. And then Seth's giving this speech that he's put a lot of thought into about part-time guys who show up, take advantage of all the hard work, blood, sweat, tears of the full-timers. And the crowd starts chanting CM Punk. And he seemed legitimately irked by that. And he's like, all right, cheer the people killing the industry, whatever the exact quote was. Did that stand out to you as one? Yes, Seth seemed genuinely irked by it. Because it's not inconsistent. When we talk about Seth being popular beyond his music, I mean, I think he is, but I also think he's the third favorite amongst these three, maybe fourth if you count Heyman. I think there's more passionate CM Punk loyalists and Roman Reigns fans than Seth, even if people generally like Seth, maybe not as much as singing a song, but I don't think it's fair to say he's only over because of the catchy music. And yeah, well, I'll throw in too. A Milano says Seth is the only one focused on the match. It's the main event of WrestleMania. Roman and Punk are fighting over Heyman. To me, it all leads to Seth and Heyman. And Four Eyes Malone said Seth definitely will carry the match in terms of flow and action. So yeah, comment a little bit more on Seth, including the question of if his popularity, where's popularity rates relative to fans just liking to sing a song? Because they did chant CM Punk once his music stopped, and that has happened before where it's, there does seem to be a drop off afterwards, at least.
He's so Seth Rollins is popular. I think the problem is he's in a match with maybe two of the few people that are more popular than him. So therefore, when compared to Roman and Punk, he's going to be third. I mean, there's no really way around that. Third, maybe higher than 99.9% of the roster, but in this one match,
yeah,
he's third. For me personally, I actually had this conversation with Justin in the car on our way back from the show, but wrestling now has become such a TV product. They don't do the house show schedule that this sort of like, oh, you're a part-timer and you don't make all the towns. Like, no one's making as many towns as they did pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So that argument doesn't really make sense to me, and it kind of doesn't serve a point because people want to see CM Punk. They want to see Roman Reigns. They don't care that they don't wrestle a full schedule. It doesn't really matter to them. So it doesn't really gain Seth sympathy in maybe the way he thinks it should or maybe would have, 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, Roman isn't around as much as Seth. Punk is around sort of in between the two. And Seth might be making an argument, as you point out, that doesn't resonate the way that it did, just a handful of years ago. And that might be, a miscalculation on his part if he thinks that's going to help him compete with popularity. I think people like who they like, and unless it's egregious, they don't want to dislike someone because they've negotiated a good contract with limited dates to a point. But yeah, it's not enough to close a gap and work for Seth. Ron Solario says, I'm on Seth's side. Four Eyes Malone says, based on what we've seen, I don't see how Heyman doesn't try to go back to Punk full time unless the match this weekend spins it again. Chris, what do you have a firm prediction, or is it up in the air or speculation? How does this play out on Saturday? We're talking about the build, but there will be a payoff. What is it?
I like the idea of Heyman going to Seth. That would be interesting. I think that would be something that would actually be more intriguing than the other two options. But I actually think that he will go back to Roman. Not necessarily that Roman will necessarily is going to win the match, but I think he's going to go back to Roman because he didn't run to CM Punk immediately when Punk came back. I think he's going to try to stick with Roman.
Also, Jason D says it's all symbolism for Punk. Without Heyman, Punk wouldn't be where he is. So it's all about full circle for Punk. I mean, this is getting into the head of CM Punk for me. We talked a lot about where Seth is coming from. CM Punk seems to be reveling in sticking it to Roman. Like he got Heyman to do something that has upset and rattled Roman Reigns enough for Reigns to attack Seth and go after Punk, but also palm face Heyman as if he's Io Sky in the ring with Rhea and Bianca. This is destabilizing Roman in a way that, could backfire, but it also could work in his favor. If Heyman ultimately sides with Punk, we won't know if Heyman was planning to, or if it was Reigns acting the way he has the last couple of weeks that led to it, or maybe they'll incorporate that in and address it. But right now, you can think, well, Heyman was always going to side with Punk. The favor is just a facade to try to, make it seem like to Roman that this isn't a betrayal or him choosing sides. It's just him cashing in a favor. No big deal. Just one night only. Don't read too much into it. But it really was worth reading into. Or it wasn't a plot. It genuinely was just a favor, a one-time thing. Get over it. It's no big deal. But then because of how Roman reacted, including shoving him down and just walking away from him and ghosting him and not making eye contact with him, that actually could lead to Heyman deciding I have to be with Punk. And that could be the explanation for Heyman going from loyal to the tribal chief to betraying him. There'd be some sympathy on Heyman for it, but Punk could be seen, dare I say, as the architect of it, like Seth calls himself. Chris, your thoughts on that possibility in those scenarios?
That's possible, but I guess the only thing for me that I think about is Heyman is already kind of let Roman go for certain things. There was last year the whole storyline that Heyman didn't contact him for the longest time, or Roman didn't contact him. You know, the other part of the bloodline put him through the table, and I feel like he's always deferred to Roman. So I like that idea, but there has to be a strong reasoning. Like, is his friendship with Punk so powerful that he sees this as a way away from Roman after not seeing a way before? But that's just something that needs to be really. I think most of my issue with this feud is that it has to be clearly defined. It's way too up in the air about what is possible or why people are doing certain things. So if that does happen, then you just have to make sure that's very clear.
Do you think Saturday night there is a clear-cut heel among these three coming out of it, or at least someone who's supposed to be a heel based on the way it's booked? Even if you don't specify who, do you think that at least somebody goes heel?
No, I don't think so. Because I just think this is a thrown together match to get them on WrestleMania, and they're all going to be doing different things in about 2 weeks.
Yep. Andrew H says Heyman with the facial expressions and reactions help make the matches. That's why he's out there. Think Mania 30. Well, yes, in a non-kayfabe sense, in a non-storyline sense, Heyman is mega talented, but there's got to be a story. I don't know if Andrew's trying to counter the idea of what's he doing out there. He's a great performer and he's a star and people care about him. But what is the presupposition for Punk and Roman within the storyline of caring about him? And that's what we're trying to delve into and sort of extrapolate from the hints that have been put out there. Andrew Sisson, hi Andrew, welcome, says Seth stepping up when he's been slotted. That's a tongue twister. Andrew Sisson, Seth stepping up when he's been slotted in a third wheel role, just like he did last year at WrestleMania 40. Undeniable talent who doesn't let himself be outdone by anyone. Chris, I think you've been largely complimentary of Seth. What do you think of his performance here? And he does have, he's competing with Punk and Roman, and as you said, they're more popular than him. They seem like bigger stars. Part of that is being away for longer, Punk being away for a long time, and Roman being more part-time. It actually kind of leads to more of a novelty of seeing them. But I think most people would say if you were to draft 2 out of those 3 and you get 6 years of their prime, I think most people would take Punk and Roman over Seth. That's just, but like you said, Seth would be higher than most others on the roster. So what have you thought of Seth's role and how he's executed it in the build to this?
I think, meandering about sacrificing himself, that I was not a fan of. I think his storyline here is most clear. He doesn't like either of those 2 gentlemen, the Shield history and the Punk history of the last few months, and he wants to win. I think he's done a really good job. I think, for these matches, any match for it to be successful, you need multiple sides, all the opponents to have some worthiness to make it interesting. And I think he's definitely done that. I think the problem is he's the 3rd most popular person in the match, but he's still very popular, or else someone less popular with him wouldn't be getting a reaction at all. So I think he's doing a pretty good job. I think really the question is how much, who's going to be the focus on after the match. I don't think it's going to be him, but that would probably, but as I said before, him being the focus with Heyman is actually the most interesting thing for me that could come out of this.
Forrest Malone pokes a hole that is common to a lot of wrestling storylines. He says, obviously, we know the stories stay told on show nights, but Heyman not being able to just talk to Roman about the situation anytime or day is silly. That is one of the elements where we have to suspend our disbelief a bit. Every once in a while they bring up an explanation for it. I've been texting you all week. You didn't answer. I think the idea is you're obligated to show up to work and you bump into people you'd rather avoid. You get to avoid them in general in, people who work a normal five day a week, Monday through Friday type day job. They get to avoid their coworkers if they want to in the evening and on weekends. In pro wrestling, you get to do it if you're on Raw Tuesday through Sunday. That all changes on Monday. So I think the idea is you're obligated and compelled to be in the same place once a week. And that's where people who want time for themselves and avoid each other sort of inevitably get called upon by their boss to have a face-to-face, or they bump into each other backstage, or they get interrupted during a promo. I'm largely okay with that, Chris, and I think that works here.
Yeah, I just think the one thing I think it's harder in the age of like social media and text messages for it to be completely out of the loop. I can understand the 80s when someone's doing a house show every day that, I couldn't reach you because obviously one to you and the other, but he could comment on his Instagram stories or something.
Yeah. All right. Another comment from HiTube. Got some new people in the chat today, so welcome everybody. Seth calling Roman a part-timer or criticizing Punk for leaving doesn't work when they're both there live. I would say it works less, but you can look at somebody in the ring, Hugh, and go, "Oh, nice you got to show up." I've been here every week. You're here every third week. Sometimes you take 3 months off. I still think the bigger issue here. I get what Hugh's saying. That doesn't resonate as much, but I think. Yeah, you can point out I'm here every week, and now you're here just this week when it's WrestleMania season. I think one of the problems here, that we talked about, the schedules aren't like they once were, but also, what if it resonate? What if it does resonate? We made the case it doesn't resonate as much because they don't do house show schedules. What if it does resonate with fans? Now you have Seth criticizing Punk and more so Roman, who are massively popular for just being people who are taking advantage of their leverage to not show up to work very much, which again, in real life, you don't blame Roman for it, but storyline wise, if he cares about the title, if he cares about the industry, so to speak, he'd be there. He'd want to be there more often. He doesn't have to be. He negotiated that, but it's being used against him. And even if most people still ultimately like Roman more, you are telling a story where baked into it is valid criticism that could cause a little softening of the loyalty to Roman. I don't know if it's worth going there at all. I don't know. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I just don't see it being that really having a point really at this stage in wrestling. I mean, one, I know he was injured, but Seth Rollins was gone for about 4 or 5 months last year too. So someone could say, "Oh, you were hurt, you were in here," even though again he was legitimately injured. I also don't think you left for. I mean, me personally, you left for 10 years. That was under previous management, and I don't know how many references you want to make to, wow, this guy was bad because he left during previous management. Where a lot of people are not in favor of previous management, that actually made it backfire on Seth, where it's like he seemed like someone of principle, while you were like, I would sacrifice anything that people could not look highly on that.
Yeah, good point. As far as Malone adds, Seth has even said in interviews he is happy he doesn't have to carry every show anymore like he was for a while. I don't know if that's canon or not, but point made. Interesting comment from Dan. Heyman looks pathetic chasing after Roman. My tribal chief. It makes me wonder why Punk is even friends with him. Does Heyman, imagine being a new viewer and seeing Heyman, and you didn't see him with Lesnar, and you don't know the full history. You didn't live it in real time. You'd think it's kind of weird all these people are fighting over this guy who's, just so clingy and needy and distraught over, as a grown man approaching age 60, is obsessed with these men in their late 30s and 40s. I don't know. I mean, how do you think Heyman comes across? Is there a level of undignified? Is he coming across as somewhat undignified in his attempts to try to have both things at once? Roman's forgiveness while also executing a favor for Punk.
He's groveling way too much, but it also doesn't seem. It doesn't showcase its value, as you said before. Like, why would CM Punk be so jazzed to have someone who just spends his time crying over his tribal chief? Like, why would you want that person in your corner? He's not like the manager used to. I mean, I know you don't want to. I can't always go back to the 80s, but the manager, it almost seemed like he had control, or she had control over the wrestlers, that they were kind of in charge. I even saw a clip. I mean, it was from, I can't remember WrestleMania it was, when I think Andre the Giant finally, I know he was pretty much at the end, and he, Bobby Heenan turned on him. But that thing was sort of like, you think that Bobby Heenan in his mind thinks that he controls Andre the Giant, even though obviously of the size difference. And so you have a manager now that everyone wants, but he's crying and sniveling, and you don't quite see what he brings to the table. If you haven't known him for a long time, it doesn't really resonate. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah.
I mean, there's different kinds of managers over the years. The ones who are very on the business side, Gary Hart, J.J. Dillon to an extent, Bobby Heenan. And then there's the ones who controlled the more wild wrestlers, so Skandar, Akbar. I think, Jimmy Hart and Slick sort of were paired with those people, grouped with those people some of the time, not all the time. And then there were like, the Jim Cornette type, the rich kid who wasn't an athlete but wanted to be around the jocks and had to bring some value to it. But, they seemed like they just wanted to be around athletes. And yeah, Heyman doesn't call himself a manager either. I mean, he's, the advocate, and I mean, he comes up with alternate ways to try to present himself, but ultimately he's, he grew up watching the Grand Wizard and Lou Albano, and he knows he's a manager, and he'll go down as one of the 2 or 3 greatest on almost everybody's list, and is probably making a case for true historians of wrestling as a top guy, on the majority of ballots. I mean, Bobby Heenan, still my favorite, but I mean, I just think Bobby was amazing, but it's sort of the LeBron Jordan thing. I mean, it's like, well, just pick your era, pick your stats, it's like they're both.
Not if you're a Knicks fan.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Timberwolves Knicks finals.
Yeah, that's probably only going to be on NBA 2K. That's probably not what's going to be in real life.
Well, I because you're not confident about your Knicks.
Well, the Knicks haven't beat the Celtics or the Cavaliers at all this season. They're the 1 and 2 seed. So
yeah, the Wolves are by the way, the Wolves are the only team with a superpower over Oklahoma City. They have pretty handily beat them. So the Wolves are great against good teams and then let their guard down against lesser teams. And their record does not reflect how good and deep they are. But the Lakers series is going to be a test because there's some real talent, obviously, there with Luka and LeBron.
I'll be rooting for Minnesota. The Knicks also lost 3 out of 4 to the Pistons, who they're playing in the first round. So I may not have to worry about that.
Okay. Pep talk. The Wolves got destroyed last year by Phoenix, including in the last game of the season, and then they swept them in the first round. So sometimes that stuff turns around when coaching gets serious and players get serious.
I hope so.
I'll be watching. I want Cat. I mean, Cat's Karl Anthony Towns, former Timberwolves, but I want him to do well. I mean, I think most people in Minnesota are rooting for him, even if the trade has worked out really well for both teams to this point, and it'll pay dividends for the Wolves in years to come in ways that aren't being measured this year too.
And most people are rooting for the Lakers because they're the Lakers. So that, even though I like the Timberwolves anyway, that would be enough reason for the Timberwolves.
I mean, I understand LeBron, I understand the Lakers uniforms and all that, but I think people are gonna find out how freaking amazing the number 1 3-point shooter in the league is, and Anthony Edwards, who's also the best in-game dunker, who's also a great great in so many aspects of the game and a really great teammate. Has some immaturity to him, even a little more mature in certain ways than his age excuses. But he's gonna have the biggest audience he's ever had, and he steps up under the spotlight. It's gonna be. I think it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of people, what people in Minnesota see week in and week out. As long as he doesn't get too technicals early and gets he'll be better than that.
Yeah, him or Luka may not play every game. They both get technicals.
Yeah,
quite frequently. But also Anthony Edwards is someone who a lot of people think could be or should be the face of the NBA. I think it's hard. I don't think he necessarily wants to be, but one way to definitely put yourself. I mean, he's been out there anyway. He's an all-star. He's an Olympian. But you beat the Lakers the way that they've been talked about in this series, and it'll be very interesting. And definitely put him up there on that pedestal. Yeah.
He rises to the occasion when he's against great players and idols. He did last year against Kevin Durant. And yeah, it's going to be a really fun series. I know we just have like 7 straight wins against Denver, eliminated from the playoffs last year, swept them this year. The Denver Nuggets, the Wolves did, and then Golden State didn't win in overtime, so then it ends up being Wolves against the Lakers. A lot of Minnesota fans are like, shoot, and I'm like, I'm ready for some fresh opponents. Bring them on. Bring on the spotlight. All right, that's our NBA preview. Let's get back to previewing WrestleMania here. Okay, a couple other chat comments, and we're going to get to callers. Derek Mitchell says, a favorite quote of mine from Carlito's Way: a bullet will kill you faster than a favor. I think Punk's favor will cost him in the end, and Rollins needs a new direction to strengthen his character. I've entertained the notion. I just don't think Seth, and I think tonight didn't drop hints that steered people away from the idea of Seth and Heyman being together. I don't know. I mean, I know there's some advocating for that, and Seth would benefit the most from it. That doesn't mean it's the best decision. Yeah. Any more thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah. Also, just to add on to, Punk will look really bad if his big favor was for have Paul Heyman manage him in the match that Paul Heyman turns on him for. He will look pretty bad.
Yeah. YouTube in reaction to comment earlier, Heyman is a face but still plays his weakling heel character. What happened to the confident Heyman we've seen when Roman returned last year? I mean, Heyman is strong when he's next to Brock, when he's next to Roman, in the bloodline. When he's standing next to Punk, he is less brave when it's Solo cornering him. And when he definitely gets his I was going to say superpower, but that's not really the right use of that. But he gains his confidence evaporates almost instantly when he doesn't have the person, the badass who he's managing by his side. So anyway, yeah. All right, I'm reading some comments about our NBA chat, and I don't want to get derailed by it, but I'm scanning them to see what people's opinions are. All right, enough on that. Let's go to some calls, and we will begin with David Miller. David, who contributes to PWTorch as our NXT Alt Perspective TV reporter, also going to be covering Evolve for PWTorch.com. Always good to bring him on for his thoughts and questions. David, welcome. What are your thoughts on Raw tonight?
Thanks, Wade. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate you guys having me on. I thought this Raw was actually kind of pointless. I think there has been way too much time between Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania. I think everything that needed to be said, with the exception of the final, part of the show tonight, everything that needed to be said has already been said. I mean, Gunther cut a pretty good promo, but Jay really just kind of came out there and just pandered to the crowd a little bit. It seemed like there was just nothing more for them to do. I think they could have gone straight from the interview last week where Jay, kind of, faced down Gunther. I think they could have gone straight from that into WrestleMania the next weekend. You had the three promos from the three ladies in the triple threat match. I mean, pretty much the same thing. What needed to be said has already been said with them. Good opening match, great opening match with Bayley and Liv Morgan. I thought that was probably, as far as match quality goes, maybe the highlight of the show. I'm telling you, those bumps on the outside, those suplexes on the outside, those are rough. I did some independent wrestling for several years, and let me tell you, that taking those bumps on the outside hurt. So, big props to the ladies in that match. But as far as the end segment, Paul Heyman, he does come across as this. With Brock Lesnar, he was a mouthpiece. If you remember him from the Dangerous Alliance, you see his worth, you see his value there. If you remember, even his time with Brock Lesnar, he was basically Brock Lesnar's mouthpiece. With Roman, he is Chester to Roman's Spike. If you remember the cartoon dogs, Chester and Spike, Chester would follow the big dog around and just run the circles around him, and that's what Heyman's doing. And it looks, quite honestly, it looks pathetic. I don't like it. I've never liked he comes across as way too subservient to Roman. And from a fan's standpoint, going into this match, what do I want to see based on what I've seen so far? Roman has not really, and I said this last week, he's playing basically the cool heel at this point. There's nothing really likable about his character, except they were happy to see him come back to kick Solo's butt and take his Follow back. Once that happened, he's not really done anything to help Paul. He wasn't there. Again, he wasn't there when Paul got put through the table, and he's just. There's good now. He's still popular, of course, but what, as a fan, I would like to see, because Punk has come out there to his defense twice now. He's come out and he's been out there to Heyman's defense. I would like to see Heyman go with Punk. Mm-hmm. As a fan, that's what I would like to see. What are they going to do? I don't know. because
Yeah.
Heyman has been so subservient to Roman.
Let's
Go ahead, Wade.
yeah. What if us observing Heyman has been almost pathetically desperate to keep Roman's approval is part of the intent here for the story, which is Heyman groveled, as Chris put it, for Roman's forgiveness, approval, tolerance of him being in Punk's corner. And Heyman's building up a killer heel promo if he sides with Punk against Roman. Whether that means they're full-fledged heels or not, remains to be seen. Who knows with Levesque's booking and the direction of the story, what it portends about what might come next. But Heyman might just be like, I groveled and you still rejected me. You made too big of a deal. No offense to Punk and not trying to downgrade my value, but you're Roman freaking Reigns and you couldn't just let me. I mean, he doesn't want to make too compelling of a case, but you couldn't let me just do the favor to Punk and be in his corner. It's not, he kind of tried to make that case in his last promo. This isn't about, I can pay back a favor and not be disloyal. He tried to make that argument and Seth countered it. I disagree with you, David, that this week was spinning its wheels. I don't think we needed a show full of vignettes or video packages or meaningless matches unrelated to WrestleMania. Now, you can argue if WrestleMania came a week earlier, they would have been fine, but I liked seeing all four in the ring again. I liked Roman directly addressing Heyman over this Punk favor and the body language and the resentment and the sense of betrayal. He seemed hurt. I wanted to see that with my eyes, and I think it added something this week. Chris, what do you think? How much did tonight's segment add to the build, or is it just filler because there was an extra week?
I think it added to it, even some of my own, things that I don't like or things that are not clear. I think it was really important to set the stage again that there is some animosity between the three, and the fact that Heyman, at least going in, has split loyalties, and maybe it's not as clear that he's not just going to be in Punk's corner nominally. He might actually get involved. I think whatever they did today actually makes it seem as if he might do more. There's a potential that he might do more than he would have otherwise.
All right, David, back to you.
Yeah, let me clarify something here, Wade. The final segment, yes, I do think that was definitely needed. That was not filler at all, but I'm basically referring to everything really leading up to it.
Okay.
I don't think anything leading up to it was really necessary, but that part definitely was. You needed to see Roman confront Heyman over, why is he going with Punk, and the idea that I the way I take it, Punk cashing in this type of favor is more of getting in Roman's head.
Yeah,
getting in Roman's head by stealing Paul away from him rather than having Paul Heyman, because just having Paul Heyman in his corner really does nothing, because he's, as we point out, he's not, he no longer has the the 3 foot long cell phone that he used to bring to, that would get smashed over someone's head, and he's not Jimmy Hart with a cane, he's not Jim Cornette with a tennis racket. He doesn't interfere in matches. He's just there, with his facial expressions, like I think Chris said, as far as worrying about, is Roman going to win? Is he going to lose? But I think it's more of a situation of getting into Roman's head, because really, what can maybe he stays, maybe he goes with CM Punk and stays with him. I don't know, but I would really like more for something to be on the line more than just Paul Heyman's loyalty, like you said. Maybe a shot at one of the world titles, a shot at whoever wins between Cody and Cena, something like that.
So, Chris, would you like Heyman to outright say to Roman, all Punk's doing is trying to get in your head, or not? Like, I mean, people are thinking that. David is right. I mean, I think most people, if they really had a conversation about this, would come to the conclusion, yeah, Punk, wants Heyman in his corner for old time's sake, maybe a little strategic advantage. but mostly it's to get back at Roman. It's to get in his head. And in a way, it's sort of cruel of Punk to make make Heyman choose. I mean, it's like telling two friends only, one of you can come to my birthday party and one of you has to agree not to. It's like, I don't know. What Punk could just go, Paul, you can be at ringside, and I know you want us both to win, and you want to be there to witness history. He could have been cashed in a favor in a different way. And the favor, as David points out, and we've talked about, doesn't have a tangible benefit that we can really concretely explain other than he's the manager of champions, but how does that contribute to this match? And, what are the stakes that would motivate Heyman? So circling back, would it be better for the story if they just acknowledge what people are thinking, which is are you just Roman, why are you so mad when you can tell all Punk wants to do is get in your head by putting me in a position to have to choose? I chose. I figured you would realize it's not a big deal and you're overreacting to it. Can Heyman talk to Roman that way? Would that help, or would that just blow everything up?
That would probably, I think, blow everything up, because part of it is Heyman is helping Punk's mental manipulation. Because Heyman could say no, he could have offered him something else. I guess is why this is convoluted, because theoretically, let's say CM Punk had won the Royal Rumble and he's wrestling Cody or Gunther for the title, then Paul Heyman in his corner could be that impetus to help him win. Instead, he's in this sort of awkward match where Heyman is trying to be a man of his word, which is, of course, not the reputation for Paul Heyman in professional wrestling. He's a man of his word, but he has done this in this point. But while also trying to stay in Roman's good graces, he can't do both. So I just think the way this whole started is so convoluted that it's really hard to make sense of it, because it didn't start with the premise that was very logical.
David, anything else you want to add?
Just one more point. For those of us who are keeping track of this, it only took about maybe 2 shots from Laura Valkyria to knock Raquel Rodriguez's bandana off. So it only took about 2 seconds for her bandana to come off this week.
All right. David, anything else? I don't know if David can hear us. Chris,
no, other than that, I think they got a good build up to WrestleMania. I think both nights are looking strong right now, and looking forward to this weekend. I think it's going to be a very, very high level WrestleMania this year. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, David. Great hearing from you. Chris, how do you think this lineup looks for WrestleMania? We got night 1 and night 2 laid out on Friday. They ran down it again tonight. Do you think this looks like a middle of the road, very good WrestleMania? Because I think a middle of the road WrestleMania these days is very good. Does it seem exceptionally good, or does it seem a little below par but still watchable, or otherwise? Make your own multiple choice option.
I think it's going to be good. I don't think it'll be as good as last year, and I think that's part of the problem with WrestleManias. Is I think the one last year was really good, and this one, just on paper, obviously we'll see what the matches go, doesn't seem as strong, so it'll have a negative reaction to it. For me, I'm excited. It's my sister's birthday this week. I don't want to say, oh, she'll be mad at me, but I'll get to watch WrestleMania for the first time in several years, night 1, with my parents, who got me into wrestling a long time ago. So I'm very excited about that. So night 1 for me is special. Awesome. But I think the issue really is last year WrestleMania was a much better show, was on paper a much better show than this one is, and therefore the recency bias is going to have this one maybe looked at in a negative light. But I think, obviously we'll see what they do in the ring, but I just don't think it'll be as good as last year's.
Yeah. I think it has room to be excellent, and also, I mean, it storyline wise, it's a mixed bag. I think if you looked at this lineup 3 months ago and imagined what the hype would be like, I think the actual hype would be under most people's expectations. I don't think, other than Jay and Gunther, I think of the really big matches, everything feels like it's been a little convoluted or below ideal. Like it just, I don't think it's manifested super well. Do you agree with that, by the way, as a premise?
I agree. I mean, we've spent the last hour or so talking about a match that on paper seemed interesting, but the premise is kind of weird. The triple threat, Charlotte and Tiffany Stratton, which on paper maybe seemed interesting, is a disaster. John Cena and Cody Rhodes are not what people thought it would be or could be. I think, yeah, Gunther and Jey Uso was probably the one match on paper may not have stood out 2 months ago, but I think actually is more interesting now after what they've done. And probably the only other match that I would put in that category is, which I don't think is going to be a very long match, but Naomi versus Jade Cargill. Those are probably the only two matches I think that have me more interested than they were on paper. Most of the other ones, some due to various factors, haven't really got me as interested as I thought I would be with my.
Yep. All right, let's keep bringing on our callers here. We'll go to Dan next. Dan, welcome. Good to hear from you. What do you think about Raw tonight, and what do you think about what Chris and I were saying about the WrestleMania lineup? Bring up whatever you would like.
Oh, I was thinking about the lineup, and I was like, not all WrestleManias can be hits, right? Like, even same with the Super Bowl, NBA Finals. Like, they're gonna have some lulls in between years, but it is what it is, and I'm just looking forward to the ones I want to see, and that's about it.
Yeah. So, what are you looking forward to most?
Ironically, it's the low card or mid card, which is El Grande Americano versus Ray, I guess.
Yeah. That should be a good match. Cole said Ray is tonight. Ray's defying Father Time. Gable's a good opponent for him. I mean, El Americano is a good opponent for him to shine at WrestleMania. One of his final, if not final, ones in a significant match. We'll see. What else are you looking forward to?
Kind of sort of the Roman versus Punk versus Seth. It's not my cup of tea because I hate triple threat matches because the third guy just always ends up being the third wheel or whatever, right? But there's no rules, so they can pull out the tables, the chairs, whatever they want. Not so thrilled about the women's championships.
Yeah.
It is what it is. And then the rest of the card, what's his name? Braun something shit. Sorry. The guy who does the spears. Breaker. Yeah, I want to see his match. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's pause you down for a second. I want to talk about that. Breaker was about to be interviewed. Finn Balor attacks him. And then chaos happens in the ring. What have you thought of the build, and what do you think of this as the final build for this chaotic match? I mean, we have Braun, just going from beating up heels to beating up a babyface. And again, that's where I say, like, if the main event on night one were the only match where there was some ambiguity over who you're supposed to root for, I might be more totally forgiving of it in that sense. But you've got Balor is a clear heel, and Carlito and Dominic playing the heel role. Then you have Penta, a clear babyface, but you got Braun Breaker, who's attacking Penta, but also the sympathetic one who's being attacked by heels, and he is the unpredictable badass, I think is what Cole is christening him. I don't know. What do you think, Chris, of the build? I mean, the match should be really good. I mean, there's a lot of talent in the ring. And Breaker is a top guy in the making. He's on that path. This is part of telling that story. They also want Penta to get over, and the others are fun role-playing heels in this one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this match is very interesting. Braun Breaker, I think, has just become a babyface because he does cool moves, and he's a big guy. What's interesting with the crowd reaction is he obviously gets booed. He actually gets cheered whenever he beats up the Judgment Day, but it's a bit of a mixed reaction when he goes up against Penta, because I think they see Penta as a babyface. They don't want to see him get hurt or injured. I think this is going to lead. I think this is a fateful last words, but I think this purpose of this match is to lead to the eventual Judgment Day breakup, when they both maybe could win and they end up having some miscommunication. But again, I think it is kind of held back by the fact that it's one of multiple multi-person matches on the show. But I think that they did a pretty good job of getting people interested. There are people interested in all the characters, so I think it'll go over pretty well.
Dan, back to you.
So I missed the last SmackDown. Was his brother involved? Ray?
No, Ray. They're keeping them apart. Ray Phoenix and Penta. They're acknowledging their brothers, but keeping them apart.
Okay, all right. So I guess he's probably not going to be involved too much either. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, cool. Dan, great. Right. Thanks. Good to hear from you.
All right.
Yep. Give us a call Saturday and Sunday night after WrestleMania later this week on the PWTorch Daily Cast. Brandon LeClaire hosting with Greg Parks and another co-host probably the other night. Got a super chat from Jimmy. Thank you so much, Jimmy. Very generous. I think the build to Mania this year has been completely overblown. This year has many more exciting matches that were built outside of the main events, unlike last year. I'm very excited for Mania. What do you think about the distribution of attention, Chris, that this lineup is getting? Do you think, it's clear the biggest matches are Jay and Gunther, the triple threat that just closed out Raw, the hype for that, Cody, and Cena. Trying to think, is there one that qualifies as the fourth biggest match in terms of how it's being hyped so far? Because I don't mean in terms of like high quality hype, but I think there's a drop off after that. Some might argue the women's three-way probably is the fourth most hyped, but it seems like the three I mentioned are the biggest.
Yeah, those three are the biggest. I think the women's three-way would be fourth, a little bit drop after that. I think part of it, to me, just me personally, I just think last year had a bigger, or for me, a more interesting main event: Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, as well as the night one main event was more interesting. The Rock and Roman Reigns against Cody and Seth.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think for me, I think main event first. I'm more interested in that. I think some of the issues that they had is that they had some matches on the show have been, like the Jey Uso Gunther thing has gone on for 2 months basically, and then other matches on the show, like the women's tag match, was finalized on Friday. So I think that's part of the problem too. You have some matches that have been 2-month builds and others that have had maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and that kind of makes it difficult for some of those other matches. But I think the show will be good. I just double checked the card, and I am upset I'm gonna have to that the Tiffany Stratton Charlotte Flair matches night one, because I don't want to have to explain to my parents what sliding into DMs are. But
oh God.
Hopefully I don't think they'll play that promo, so hopefully I won't have to explain to them what they're talking about. But I think also, as WrestleMania is a big night, it's a big show. I think you're going to have a lot of big entrances. You're going to have people putting on great efforts. You're going to have run-ins, people who you don't expect. I actually think this might be an opportunity to pair Ray Phoenix with Penta. Maybe Penta is getting attacked after the match and Ray Phoenix makes the save, and they can go on their journey as a tag team. That's possible, but it's WrestleMania. It's a big night in a big stadium, so I'm sure everyone will show out the best they can.
So Jimmy adds to a super chat. My point mainly is this build received criticism, and they built up the undercard better than last year. And I'll say, I think the Jade Cargill Naomi build has been good, in great part because Naomi has pleasantly surprised people in terms of how compelling she's and convincing she is as a heel. New Day and War Raiders, at least it's, New Day turned heel. They ought to have a meaningful match. They're giving that a late push. Rey Mysterio and El Grande has a whole backstory to it, and I think people are into that. LA Knight and Jacob Fatu has gotten considerable hype. Jacob Fatu's the, shiny new toy, the rising star, and LA Knight is ever popular. Tiffany Stratton and Charlotte Flair battle of two generations of two women with real life heat, and they're leaning into that in the hype for them. Also, and then on night 2, undercard, you got Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest, which felt sort of like a toss in. And then you saw the video package and Drew making his case that all of Damian Priest's, everything that stacked up to Damian Priest having an unexpected record year was all at his expense through opportunism and other things. AJ Styles, Logan Paul, AJ protecting the business from an interloper who gets to take the fast track and leapfrog all paying dues, as a contrast to AJ, who spent 2+ decades, as Cole pointed out, working his way to WWE. You have the triple threat women's match, which we mentioned, getting a lot of TV time. I think it's a convoluted mess, which I want to get into in a moment, but I don't think tonight helped a lot, but it maybe added some clarity to certain things. And then the women's tag match, Liv and Raquel against Lyra and Bayley, that got decided on SmackDown. That's probably the least hyped of all the undercard matches because they just made it, but it's good. I think Liv has earned her way onto this lineup. Neither of the new women's secondary titles have otherwise. It's a solid undercard build, to play into what Jimmy is saying. They have built up the undercard matches, I'd say, better than average. And it's a solid undercard that I think has gotten a good build. I think when I say on paper, if you saw this lineup 2, 3, 4 months ago, would you think the hype lived up to what it appeared on paper? I'd say no to the top matches. Even Cena Cody sort of underperformed, as good as there's been some really good moments in it. But I think the mid card and undercard, wherever that blends in, has been probably better than people would have anticipated. Not by a lot, but I'd say most people would vote better. What do you think?
Yeah, I get Jimmy's point that it was built up better, the mid card, but I think part of it for me is that there's so many convoluted angles that I can't get away from. Even something that's not built up well is not as confusing. The women's title match, both of them for various reasons, I don't think have been built up very well. Yeah. Again, you have certain matches that are on there to they haven't had very lengthy builds to them. I don't really necessarily think that they've done a great job of. I guess maybe I'm not personally a fan of the Rey Mysterio El Grande Americano. I know that this got a lot of time, but I guess I'm not a fan of that angle. I'm it's one of those things where if Rey Mysterio wins in the end and unmasks Chad Gable, people will say that it's worth it after all the time, but that we'll have to see if that happens.
Yeah,
but that has not been a favorite of mine personally. So I think that's part of it to me. There's certain things that they've just built up that just have been below par, and maybe that's doing little is better than doing bad.
Yep, fair enough. All right, let's bring Jason D from Australia into the conversation here. Jason, great to hear from you. What is on your mind about tonight's Raw?
Yeah, thanks, Wade and Chris. I'll talk about the women's triple threat soon, but in regards to the men's triple threat, I'm not as confused as everyone else, and maybe I see this differently, but the symbolism of Paul Heyman being in CM Punk's corner, that sums it up all for me, because CM Punk is all about symbolism. His whole feud with Drew McIntyre, a lot of it was to do with that bracelet, and a lot of people were saying, that bracelet's, it's like an 80-cent thing, who cares? With all these wrestlers, it's all about what's right and what's wrong from a symbolism and moral point of view. So CM Punk has clearly established that if it wasn't for Paul Heyman, he wouldn't be where he is. So he wants that full circle moment where he is in his corner. And yes, it is to send a message to Roman, who, as David mentioned, hasn't shown any real likable traits since he came back. The only reason why people cheered Roman is because he's so great as a tribal chief, and you had an imposter tribal chief trying to take his position. And Punk's trying to send the message to Roman is that you don't own Paul Heyman, and he means more to me than what he does to you. Because even Roman said, he pulled Heyman from irrelevancy. He made him relevant, which is a pretty arrogant thing to say. So I completely understand why CM Punk would want Paul Heyman in his corner. It is about what's right for him and the symbolism. It's got nothing to do with what Paul Heyman offers tangibly. It's that full circle moment. So that clears that up. But
Jason, pause, if I may. Why should that be more overtly stated on television so that it's understood why Roman is so upset? Or do you think everyone watching just goes, yeah, Roman's pissed because it's sort of, middle school. I thought I was your best friend, and I don't know how,
And it's not. Roman has said that he feels that he pulled Heyman from irrelevancy, that he made Heyman relevant, that he welcomed him into the family, because even Heyman's got that long history with the Samoans, but he's still not family, right? Yes, now Roman did that for Sammy, but you really had to prove himself. So Roman feels like Heyman owes Roman more than what Roman owes Heyman, because after Brock, Roman was there to pretty much save Paul Heyman in a sense of giving him a relevant role. And Roman's the type of person who thinks that if he welcomes you in, that he's doing you a massive favor because he has such a massive ego, and he feels that being the tribal chief and the head of the table, everyone benefits by him being on top. And the fact that he welcomes you into his circle, that's something you shouldn't take for granted. And that should trump his friendship with CM Punk. In relation to, in my opinion, both Seth and CM Punk are kind of the same type of character. And I could see where Seth Rollins is coming from, because for him, it's all about the symbolism. He doesn't want Punk or Roman to win this, because what Punk represents is somebody leaving when the going got tough. Now, people will say, oh, well, CM Punk was right to do that because of management. But then how many people in real life are involved in a job where management is no good, they're against them, but they have to stay in the company because they have to make the money. They don't have enough zeros in their bank account to leave like CM Punk did. And that's what irritates Seth Rollins. And you can tell, Wade and Chris, when Seth got so pissed off when Punk was made into the main event, he says, no, he doesn't deserve it. So in his mind, Punk doesn't deserve it and Roman doesn't deserve it, because he just sort of picks and chooses his spots, and he still hasn't shown to be like grateful or thinking that everyone else is like him. It's like Roman puts himself ahead of everyone else, and Seth can't stand that. So this is a very, very clear triple threat for me, where you've got three headstrong people who believe in their own minds that they are right and that they represent what's best for themselves and the business. And it is all about symbolism. I'm fully on board with this. This whole thing makes sense to me. Three headstrong main eventers, somebody has to win, and it is about what represents what's right for the future. So there's no confusion for me with this.
Chris, what do you think of what Jason's saying?
I get what he's saying. I think for me, I just wish it was more tangible. I mean, this whole thing started because they were eliminated from the Royal Rumble. They were very upset they would not have the opportunity to be wrestling for the world title or several of the world titles at WrestleMania. But that part is gone out of the storyline. Now it's some sort of psychological, I want to prove my point. But I don't know how that gets back to the point of one of them wanting to be champion. That's my only thing, is like, I think, and also the Paul Heyman motivation not being clear to everyone. I think part of it is just, a lot of it is how they stated and how it should be stated. I think, when we do our show Wrestling Coast to Coast, we sometimes watch a promotion that we've never seen before, or sometimes we haven't seen in months. And so we really like it when they make it very clear what's happening and why people are doing something. I think for me, I take your point, Jason, but they haven't really explained that well enough on the show. And I think the best way for them to get to your point is actually explain what you said in a way that's kind of concise and that can get people who maybe be confused or haven't seen it before on board.
All right, Jason, follow up to that or anything else you want to bring up?
I think I summed it up nicely. I think everyone, look, I don't need anything tangible in this match, because I'm big on symbolism, and I'm big on, what people might think is right or wrong. And I'm interested in people who have strong points that they can make for themselves that clash with someone else. Like, I like when you can see both people's point of view. And I know that's probably not the best when it comes to getting reactions from the crowd, but I see three very intriguing characters that you can make a point for who is right. And that's what I want to see play out. So I like the way that they've done it. And maybe that could have explained it a bit better, but sometimes I feel like they leave a little bit up to the audience to decide. In relation to the triple threat for the women's, this was very... Oh, and the other thing is, people have talked about Seth Rollins siding with Paul Heyman. I don't think that's going to happen, and I don't see how that works, but Seth threw out a bit of bait to Paul Heyman when he says, I don't expect Paul Heyman to pay me back because he's a scumbag, he's low. People make their choice when they have a favour. that was up. That was Seth sort of putting a bit of bait out there as if to say, well, Paul, if you're not a scumbag and you're a good person, then you will grant me back my favor. So that was a little tease for me. If it goes anywhere, I'm not sure, but that was an interesting line that Seth threw out.
Mm-hmm.
With the women, now, I loved Bianca Belair's promo. And we got a hint that she probably might be turning heel when she said something like, well, I hope the way that I am, parents are teaching their children this. Right there, I said, now there's a line. That's what a heel would say. That the way that I go about things, well, I hope that parents will be teaching children that same way. And you can see that Rhea interjecting herself in this match. I mean, I could see Io escaping with the championship and Bianca just snapping on Rhea. And when you look at it, it seems that the confusing thing in WWE seems that if you're like a big star and everyone loves you, that sort of trumps your actions. So, for example, with Rhea, where she, as a heel, she brutally attacked Liv Morgan and put her out. Then when Liv Morgan came back to get her comeuppance, and she had every right to, people were cheering Rhea. In this instance, Bianca Belair has not done anything wrong, but it seems the crowd is sort of turning against her and siding more with Rhea and Io. So if we're seeing a slight change in attitude by Bianca and more of a heel, I'm going to like this. So I'm very intrigued to see how this plays out. And in fairness to Rhea, I do like the fact that she acknowledged that Io was sort of coming up to her looking for a championship and was due to Rhea kind of like being sympathetic towards Io. That's what cost her the championship. So if we're going to see more of a brutal side to Rhea, I don't mind seeing that either.
So I'm curious for Chris's take on this. There was a line from Bianca going, you don't have to like the truth, but you can't deny it. She was very unapologetic about how she's acted. She just said other people's actions have brought out a different side in me, but she went into her catchphrase still, you can't spell Wrestlemania without EST, which she's done before. And she's just trying to speak up for herself. Now, she also, kind of pie-faced and shoved and disrespected Io Sky, and I don't think she accounted for that. What did you take from Bianca's tone tonight? Because I think that can be read the way Jason reads it. Pretending a heel turn, we're getting a window into her taking things even further. But it could also be an attempt to go, yeah, I have come across poorly. Let me try to frame it in a way that's unapologetic, but maybe people be kind of sympathetic to, yeah, my buttons were pushed. Everybody has buttons that get pushed. But, I'm still Bianca. Chris, what was your interpretation of this tonight?
I think I agree with Jason that there are seeds for a heel turn there. Now, obviously, Bianca Belair's character is that she's confident, but she began kind of talking about how this was a difficult year for her, and this actually could be a way for her to transition into a heel because she was like, well, I was focusing on the wrong things or focusing on Jade and Naomi. I need to focus on being a champion, the world champion again. So I think definitely that it led that there. And also to me, part of the issue too, that actually would be needed because this match doesn't really have a heel. And I actually would prefer someone to be kind of, because Rhea's a babyface, even though her logic doesn't make a lot of sense. And yeah, Io is also a babyface. So Bianca having that aspect of it actually would make the match a bit more interesting for me, though that's probably something that would happen during the match, not before.
On the Rhea side of things, my analysis in my TV report at PWTorch.com was Rhea's trying to frame her petulant overreactions and repeated disrespectful behavior as justified because she was the victim of Belair's supposedly winding her up like a toy. I don't know. How about Rhea not let herself get so easily wound up by opponents in this or in real life social media? If that is her perception. I thought this storyline has damaged Rhea a lot. I thought this was trying to fix it by justifying it, doubling down on it. She goes, you're winding me up like I'm some sort of toy just so you can get what you want, make me seem like the bad guy. So she's acknowledging, somebody's perceiving her as a bad guy in this, whether it's just Bianca or she's acknowledging some fans and other observers do. And then she characterized Io Sky as pouting and moaning. That is not a babyface promo. Io Sky is getting cheered and the other two are getting booed. And if your way of trying to reclaim sympathy from the fan base, if you were wildly popular and on course to be a generational centerpiece female babyface, and your pushback to people going kind of petulant and petty, is to call the uber popular Io right now pouty and moaning because she simply doesn't want to be discarded like she's the champion and she's getting pie-faced and shoved disrespectfully by people who don't acknowledge her existence other than to put their palm in her face. I'm sorry. There's an apology tour to go on if you're Rhea, not a justifying being a jerk. And I thought that's what this was. And then she told Bianca, I can't wait to show her what it feels like when I'm the bad guy. I'll get back what belongs to her. I don't know. Chris, first you on Rhea, and then up to Jason for his thoughts.
Yeah, I just thought her logic all over the place. I mean, she lost her title because she thought someone was distracting her in the crowd. It's like, is this her first match in front of people? I mean, I could only imagine what she would have done in a different era of wrestling where people, where grandmas were cursing you out in the front row. She would have probably never won a match with that logic. So then, because they started off with that premise, everything has been trying to catch up, but just what she does doesn't make sense. It's kind of been a hit from her character. I think she wants to be kind of like, a badass person, but her actions make it difficult for people to really see her in that way entirely. And yeah, she'll probably make up for it in the ring. It's one of those things where she'll probably get over because one, she's so over, and two, they'll move to some different storyline where the Bianca turns heel or someone runs in or whatever. But I think this has done damage to her that's going to need to be repaired over the course of the next, the spring and summer.
I think you're right that Rhea will, in a way, be fine because fans are just going to like her. But that is an indictment of the ecosystem, the narrative structure, the success of the booking. If you can tell a story where Rhea is disrespectful to Io Sky, unapologetic about it, petulant, repeatedly disrespectful, and it doesn't matter, fans are going to cheer anyway, you can say, well, see, no harm was done. And I'd go, no, that says you've done a terrible job getting fans to invest and care about the stories you tell. They just like the people they like. Doesn't matter what they do, what they say, or how they act. They're still going to like them afterwards. So you can say, well, yeah, Rhea's maybe a little Teflon, a little bulletproof in that sense. Well, maybe it just is you haven't conditioned fans to believe in the stories you tell, and they sort of look past them or through them to just who they think is cool and fun to cheer for. If I'm a booker and I own that maybe this was a screwed up story, I actually want to feel like I have to repair Rhea. I don't want her to be just as popular when this ends because I want it to matter. It's like, I'm trying to think. Like if you're in a relationship and you're like, I'm going to, or it's a friend or somebody or a coworker, and you're like, I know what I'm going to say to hurt their feelings. And you do, you say it, and then they no sell it. They're like, whatever. You're like, wait a second. Like, I want what I say to matter. If you're a booker, you want your booking to matter. And if the way Rhea's been portrayed doesn't matter, she's still cheered and people just brush it off, it's going to be hard to get people to buy into your stories in the future because they didn't care about this one enough to have it change their opinion of Rhea. I'm a little less optimistic Rhea won't be damaged by it. I think Rhea will be damaged by this because I thought she was on a roll, and I think she's just going to be another baby face who people cheer despite booking. But I think it has hurt her momentum, Chris.
Yeah, I think they could just do something, shiny object where I'm trying to think they don't have. I mean, Liv Morgan's probably, or she just free Liv Morgan, but like she doesn't win this match, and on the Raw after some heel attacks her that everyone just doesn't like, and all of a sudden there's a feud there, and people kind of like put this match behind them and focus on that.
Like if somebody burns somebody's house down, you don't want fans cheering them afterwards. Like you want that to matter enough, but people don't take it seriously. People, you want to build an infrastructure to your storytelling and your booking where the things you do matter. People don't just brush them off and go, well, that was just some hot shot angle to pop a rating or a buy rate. Or, I mean, like you want people to care and like bake into their opinion on people, how they act and how they come across. And when you lose that, it becomes a lot harder to tell stories. Jason, back to you for your thoughts on that or anything else.
I agree with what you're saying. And that's the point I was raising about Roman. I would, in an ideal world, I'd really like on night one, if Jay defeats Gunther, for Roman and Jay to have a backstage segment where Roman talks about how he's proud of Jay and that he purposely didn't interject himself with what's going on because he didn't want to make it about him. If we're going to get people to like Roman, show a bit more, show that side to him. I'd like to see that because I would like to know what Roman's thoughts are with what's going on with Jay. But my point with Rhea the promo, I thought that she was more addressing, she felt sorry for Io, which is why she gave her the championship opportunity to begin with. That's what I thought it was referring to. And she was sort of down on herself for doing that because it showed a bit of sympathy, and the Mami character doesn't really show sympathy to anyone. But your overall point, Rhea's one of these people where it seems like she can get away with being a certain type of personality because she's so over with the crowd. The thing that will make this worth it, and which won't damage Rhea, is that if it does lead to a Bianca Belair heel turn, and that she feels like that she has been wrongly done by because Rhea was inserted into a match that she didn't really earn, and the crowd turned against Bianca. And to be honest with you, what would be really cool is if Naomi came out and maybe attacked Rhea and once again stuck up for Bianca. Because if Bianca's going to turn heel and we've got Naomi as a heel, teaming those two together, and Bianca realizing that Naomi had her back all along, that would be an interesting dynamic there too. So I don't think Rhea will be damaged unless if they do the right thing by Bianca and go all the way in with it. So I think they definitely got something there. But look, overall, like you guys said, I think there's a lot of meat behind this WrestleMania build because it has been a longer build. Perhaps, I was thinking maybe has it been 3 weeks too longer for some of the main events and have they dragged out? But the flip side to that is that we've been able to see more meat added to the bone for the undercard matches. So overall, I'm looking forward to the event. And obviously, if that triple threat's going to main event night 1, something big is going to happen. Like there's just not going to be a pinfall. Something dramatic's going to happen. And I'm looking forward to seeing what it's going to be.
You're going to be able to call in the Wrestling Night America post shows on the Daily Cast on here on YouTube, Jason, on Saturday and Sunday night?
Saturday night will be Sunday morning my time. Yes, I'll be able to do that, but I won't be able to do Monday because my work schedule's all over the place. I mean, people, I'm not at a play. I know people have asked if I'm at a playground. I watch it. I'm at a shopping center at the moment. There happens to be kids around and everything, so I'm trying to get to a quiet area because I'm always all over the place. So
yeah, cool. All right, we'll look forward to hearing from you Saturday night then. Jason,
right,
always great hearing from you.
All right, take it easy.
You bet.
Thanks, Jason.
Jason D from Australia. All right, let's go to AJ from Virginia, probably our last caller here. AJ, welcome. What's on your mind about Raw?
Hey, Wade. Hey, Chris. How are you guys?
Good. How you doing?
All right.
Good. So I have to say, Wade and Chris, I'm a bit disappointed at the build-up for WrestleMania, particularly with how the show ended today. I wanted to talk a bit about the Punk, Reigns, and Seth match. I know everyone shared some great thoughts in terms of, what's the value you get from Heyman's favor, right? And here's the reality. Here's how I see it. All 3 of these guys, they're flawed and great characters. They're not heels or baby faces. And I think Seth's last promo was actually perfect, where he quoted Punk saying that he's not here to make friends, just make money, and how Reigns did not save Heyman. So this obsession that they have with each other, particularly with Heyman, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because I think they're all heels in their own ways, right? They all have blood on their hands, as far as I'm concerned. Now, here's what I'm thinking. I think they plan to end night 1 with a huge surprise and shock. I don't think Heyman favors Punk, Reigns, or even Seth. There's really nothing to look forward to in any of those scenarios. I wonder if this may be an opening to introduce a new client for Heyman, possibly Gunther or Braun Breaker or Brock or someone new. And what that does is it creates a pathway for this trio, Punk, Reigns, and Seth, to try to beat Heyman's new client. Because how could Heyman favor any of these guys after Seth, put out there how no one's a good friend to you, no one really values you? I mean, for Roman to just, shove Heyman the way he did, I mean, just the disrespect. How does Heyman really get behind any of these people? So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that. If maybe what they're working towards is a new client, which I think could be very intriguing and something to look forward to.
I'll respond to that, AJ. If you want to follow up, you're sounding like have a bad connection. If you listen back, you'll know what we're talking about. I don't know if you can adjust if you've got a Bluetooth setting or something, but it was a little tough to listen to, but we certainly understood what you were saying, so I stuck with it. Chris, there's been conversation in the chat. I don't really bring it up because in terms of Brock Lesnar maybe coming back, because I just don't think WWE wants to do that, but I won't rule anything out. But I haven't even seen a red herrings, much less genuine hints about any other person being added. I think people want to see Heyman and Punk together. I think behind the scenes, there's thoughts there's a lot there, but I don't know if they're ready to turn Heyman or Punk. Either Heyman has to go. I mean, Heyman's sort of just Heyman, but turning Punk heel is a big move, but they're short on heels. Introducing somebody new, I think, complicates an already kind of convoluted situation. But AJ's argument is, yeah, it's convoluted and complicated because why would Heyman be loyal to any of these people? Seth, definitely not. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of storyline sense for him to go with him, but Roman's ghosting him and using him, and a lot of stuff that Seth and Punk have said is true. And then Punk just sort of needlessly put Heyman in a bad position. If he was his friend, he wouldn't have done that. Does that add up to Braun Breaker, Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa, Gunther, anything like that? Do you think, Chris?
Possibly. I'm trying to think of names. I don't think it'll be someone that's on the second night, so I don't think it'll be someone like Breaker who matches on night 2. Yeah, I think if that happens, that takes the focus away from Punk or Seth or whoever he goes with, and they would feud with Roman. I think Punk as a heel would be hard because people really like him, but I think that they could maybe manipulate it. I think that would be the most interesting thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think they'd be able to go all in with it and make it seem effective, but what are you giving up? What's the opportunity cost of it? And does it feel, premature before we got more before the turn? AJ, I'll throw back to you. I'll let you know if you sound better. If you don't, try to keep your comments brief because I don't want everyone to fast forward or turn it off. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks. Wait, I'm at a hotel, so maybe that's
yeah. You're still pretty rough, but go. Just try to be pithy. Just try to be brief.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to mention is just this Roman's engagement with the bloodline, right? If you think about the story, the hottest story going into WrestleMania last year is now an afterthought completely. And I think what a lot of folks were looking forward to, myself included, was seeing an arc from Roman where now he starts looking after his family. That there's a really powerful 3-second segment when Roman told Jay, "I'm proud of you." And that's when Jay was really doing well. And man, I got goosebumps and I still feel it. And that moment never came back. And I just don't understand how you can have someone like Gunther bloody up Jimmy and why that's only a Jey Uso responsibility, right? Like, where is Roman when it comes to now standing up for your family? And I believe if Roman had engaged himself in being in the corner of Jey and Jimmy, we would probably have Jey versus Gunther as the main event of WrestleMania because Roman would bring the star power of possibly engaging to help Jey win. Yeah. So I just think Roman has reverted back to his old self of I'm selfish, it's all about me, I don't care about anyone else. So I'm just disappointed that they let go of something that could have still been a very relevant storyline going into this WrestleMania.
Thanks, AJ. Chris, what do you think of the point he makes? And I mean, there is sort of a segmentation, of feuds of baby faces who save other baby faces. It's sort of like if it's not part of your storyline, you're not really allowed or, feel the need to help out.
Yeah, I think I agree with AJ because you do have that logic with the wrestling where the baby faces don't help the baby faces, but they're a bit different with the bloodline. I mean, I'm glad they kind of found a way to bring Jimmy and Jay back together because once they were both baby faces, it just didn't make sense for them to be apart. But Roman too, it's like Roman, they got back together for the Survivor Series. It wasn't that long ago. It's only in November. and they won, and so they've moved on from that completely. I understand why WWE doesn't want to muddy the waters entirely and have too many people and too many feuds, especially with Roman's schedule. He's not there all the time, so why have him there with Gunther and Jay when he has to be there with Seth and Punk? But yeah, I do get AJ's point. It kind of doesn't make sense that he doesn't have any interest after they kind of came together last year.
Yep. Good point. All right. By the way, we talked about Rhea and Bianca. Chris, what do you think of Io Sky's promo, the translations on screen, and what she had to say defending herself? Or not, I don't know, defending herself, but just standing up for herself is a better way to put it.
I thought it was good. I mean, I feel like in this promo or in this feud, she actually makes the most sense. She was
easily.
She, challenged someone for the title like everybody else does in wrestling. She won the title because her opponent didn't pay attention, and then the two people were disrespecting her as the champion. And I think someone put in the comments she's been getting more over. Yeah, because seems like the most logical of the three, and this promo really furthered that thought process.
All right, Gunther cut a tremendous promo, and then Jey Uso kept it pretty short. Ring entrance, stood on the table, a few words. This was Gunther's night to deliver just a killer heel promo. And I thought it was just tremendous work. Darrell commented in the chat, tonight was the first time I heard a heel cut a go-home promo like what Gunther did tonight. He knocked it out of the park and hit a home run. What'd you think, Chris?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I like the fact that he was supposed to be interviewed by Michael Cole. He decided the interview is now. He wanted to reiterate that he is a scary man and that he is not scared of Jey Uso, and he's going to prove it, and he's going to do it, not just for Jay or Jimmy, but just to stick in the nose of all the fans. I thought the whole thing was great.
AJ Styles carrying Cross. What's your take on that? We haven't brought that up yet. They tried to make a thing out of like Karrion Kross wearing tights that were sewn by the same person that AJ gets his tights from, which I thought was kind of a weird way to frame it. But the idea of almost like Karrion Kross is trying to get AJ to show a killer instinct against Logan, and almost framing Karrion Kross as like having good intentions. But then the angle afterwards didn't really convey that. How would you explain what's going on with Karrion Kross to someone who shows up Saturday? Is it a Saturday match? Whatever, shows up on the night that it's
Sunday.
It's a Sunday one, yeah. So yeah, how do you even summarize based on what we heard tonight and how Karrion was framed, what the Karrion Kross involvement is?
There is this thing I was joking. I don't know if is he supposed to be like the devil? Like he tries to infiltrate someone
on your left shoulder,
that they feel comfortable. He was just there to be an afterthought, honestly, to give AJ Styles a win and to set up the interaction with Logan Paul after the fact. I think that he also AJ Styles basically almost beat him up by himself, even though for a while before Logan Paul recovered, he's just kind of an afterthought at this point. I mean, I think his character, because I think he, as someone put up too, his character is someone who kind of is trying to infiltrate someone by dressing like them or showing some similarity to them.
Yeah, Ryan Solari says Kross has been copying everyone's style that he interacts with.
Yeah, it's interesting, but he never wins, so then it kind of goes away.
Yeah, yep. Some reaction one to Gunther's promo. Kyle Fassel in the chat said, "I like Gunther's promo. We need more of that." And there's another comment. I'll go to this. Dan said, "I don't understand Jay dressing in all black, and he didn't wave his hands. What do you think of Jay's role in that segment?"
I actually thought it should have been a bit shorter. I did because part of it to me was he was very serious last week, and yeah, you can make a couple jokes here or there, and because he came out in the black, he was trying to be serious, but then when he got to the ring, and doesn't help with McAfee and Cole behind him, yeeting for the seriousness, but he could have just said, I heard Gunther, I heard what you said, and I'll see you on Sunday, or something like that, and kept it simple.
Yeah. Anything else from tonight's show that you want to bring up, Chris?
My favorite moment of the show, Wrestling Logic, was when Jackie Redmond interviewed the New Day about the War Raiders promo. Now see the promo because they were playing that video game, and that was my favorite part because like, they're full of themselves. They think they should be in the game, and so they're not paying attention to the show. I thought that was hilarious.
That's fun. Jay in Hartford says, perfect follow-up by Gunther to Jay last week. After the match, I want reaction from the mothers too. Yeah, their moms have to react to it. I did like Gunther bringing up he can't wait to call his mom and tell her what he did to Jay. Just throwing that back. Rude Dog wants to know if Jay wins at WrestleMania, how many times are they going to replay his entrance music? And Ron Solario goes, by the way, the most believable New Day moment. Going back to your last comment, Chris. All right, very good. I'm content wrapping up there. Thank you everybody for joining us live on the YouTube side of things and on the podcast side. Thanks for subscribing and downloading our show. As always, we encourage you to please like our show, our episode here, comment below, and subscribe to our channel on the YouTube side of things. If you're listening to us on the podcast side, whatever podcast app you're using, Spotify, Apple, wherever, give us a 5-star rating and make some comments. That all always helps. That all adds up. And we will talk to you tomorrow on the flagship. Zach Haydorn, formerly at PWTorch, now Sports Illustrated, been doing some good interviews lately. Steve Austin, Rhea Ripley, and more. I'm going to talk to him about those experiences, what was said, and get some insight from him on those, and also talk, of course, the focus will be mostly WrestleMania. We might have a dedicated in-depth WrestleMania preview show later this week also on the Blue Logo show. This is a Red Logo show, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post show, but the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast, our Blue Logo show, is not on YouTube. It is audio only. It is our long-running weekly flagship along with other content, flashbacks, interviews, pay-per-view previews, and more. If you have not subscribed to us on the podcast side of things and you're watching us on YouTube, search Wade Keller in your podcast app. You know where it is on your phone. Search Wade Keller, subscribe to both. And then after that, search PWTorch and subscribe to the PWTorch Daily Cast and also the charcoal gray, charcoal black. Is it charcoal gray or black? Well, whatever. It's charcoal colored logo that says PWTorch VIP. That'll give you free samples of our VIP shows. That's also the way you can upgrade within your Apple account to unlock our VIP podcasts. Chris, looking forward to your hearing more about your experiences this weekend, watching some non-WWE in addition to WWE products, and hope you have a great weekend with your family.
Thank you. Hope you have a good week as well, and enjoy the playoffs. Starts on Saturday.
Yeah, it's head-to-head with WrestleMania, so no spoilers, people. I know what I'll be doing after WrestleMania this year, and it's not getting drunk with Michael Cole in an after party.
Yeah, I think the Nick game is actually on. I think it starts at 6, and we're going to be out to dinner, so I'm probably going to have to miss game 1, so I'll have to catch game 2 and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do. That's one of the downsides of this schedule for WrestleMania this year is overlapping NBA and NHL playoffs for a lot of people. Not to mention people traveling for Easter and getting together with family. All right, Chris, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and thanks everybody for your support. Here's on our screen the 7-day free trial. PWTorch VIP is what you want to search in Patreon or Spotify to get a free 7-day trial, or get a full VIP membership with expanded benefits on our main website using credit card, debit card, or PayPal. PWTorch.com/GoVIP gives you details on every option, all the pricing, all the benefits. Check it out. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support, and we will talk to you next time.